Mr. Blair, how do you think, in light of the seismic events of the last 12 months, regimes need to shift in this region now?
There's a very simple choice for regimes in this region today. Evolution or revolution. Because what is not going to happen is the status quo is going to stay in place unchanged. So where regimes are sensible, I think they'll put in place programs of change steadily, of reform. If they're not sensible, they'll find there's an unstoppable force coming up from the street that will topple the regimes. So I hope very much these evolutionary programs are there, since the problem with revolutions, frankly, is never where they begin, but where they end. And if we can get evolutionary change with stability, that is, in my view, preferable to revolution.
Where do you think President Assad sits? On the sensible side of that coin?
I think, I'm afraid, it looks as if he doesn't. So I think actually Syria is the classic example. The truth is it needs a reform program. He could have led that. I think if he'd been prepared to lead it, the outside world would have given him support in it. But you know, you can't have a small percentage of the population running a whole country. It's not going to work anymore. And I think it's, you know, at one level, I think this is very challenging because heaven knows what then happens after Assad. But if he's not prepared to put in place that proper reform program, the fact is, in time, irrespective, frankly, of what I say or you say or anyone else does, the people will say we've had enough.
Turning to the situation in Libya, I'm sure you saw the images of the last moments of Colonel Gadhafi's life, and clearly people are still trying to piece together the forensics of who pulled the trigger. But what went through your mind when you saw those images?
Look, I think, you know, I was very much involved with bringing Libya in from the cold and persuading Gadhafi to change his position on terrorism, on nuclear and chemical weapons and all the rest of it. But in the end, you see, he had a choice also of evolution or revolution. He had a choice of saying, right, I accept I'm going to have to stand down, my people are going to have a process of change, I'm prepared to help that happen. He wouldn't do it. And then in the end, the final moments are the inevitable outcome, I'm afraid, because then what happens is the regime start oppressing their people, killing their people, and then of course there's such hatred that comes back that you know, what we saw will happen in the end. And that's, you know, that should be a lesson, I think, for leaders across the region.
If you were now in a situation of sitting with the National Transitional Council, what would you say to them their priorities were in the next few weeks?
The absolute priority is to understand that you've got to put in place a proper and legitimate system of order, first of all. And then that allows you to transition democracy. Because, you know, one of the things I think is really important to understand is countries like mine took centuries to develop democracy. We're expecting these countries to go from a standing start to fully democratic systems within months, or within a few years at least. So I think the important thing is put in place that order, make sure it's legitimately done, then understand that it's not just about political systems, it's also about the economy, it's about society, and set the rules of that very, very quickly, that you're going to have an open market economy, that you're going to have a society where there's freedom of religion, for example, not just freedom of expression, you know, a whole set of things that are the building blocks then of democracy.